This is a document called Plastic Surgery per 1,000. So you see the 1 and the 3 zeros here, that's per 1,000, but just make sure you spell it all right or you say it right, but it's actually written as 1,000. Now, plastic surgery is the topic, and you can see that on the left, that this is about plastic surgery in different countries, and one can assume that these are the top countries in the world. If that's true, then South Korea has the most procedures per 1,000 population. That means out of every 1,000 people in South Korea, nearly 14 would have had some form of plastic surgery. Now you can look at all the colors in each bar, and they do mean something. But let's not look at the colors of the bars at first. Let's look at the length total of each bar. And you see South Korea's length is the longest, and it's reaching towards a number of 14. And it's not quite 14, so let's basically say that if you meet 1,000 South Koreans, 13 of them would have had plastic surgery. And if you want to look at Saudi Arabia's number, you see that it's a little past the second bar as far as the total number out of 1,000 who have had surgeries. So let's scroll back up a bit, and we see that the second bar is a 4. Now let's slowly scroll down so we can see both the 4 and Saudi Arabia. And if we go all the way down, you see that yes, Saudi Arabia, out of every 1,000 people, 4 have had some form of plastic surgery. Okay, now before we go into what all these bars mean, the colors mean, let's look at this light blue number on the right side, going vertically up and down. And that number is actually explained at the bottom right corner where it says total procedures, comma, M. I believe that that M stands for million. So for example, if there are 0.47 million people, that's 470,000. Okay, 0.47 million means what? It means you add 7 zeros to 0.47. Okay, and when you do that, then you would get 470,000. Or one way to say it is 0.5 would be 500,000. Now, the number of people who have had the surgery and the number of people in the country actually affect this frequency of surgery. What I mean by that is it could be that a country has had few surgeries, but it also has few people. For example, the number in South Korea is 0.65. So 650,000 South Koreans had surgery as of 2011. But let's look at the United States. It's a much higher number, 3.11 million. Means that almost 5 times as many plastic surgeries have happened in the United States as South Korea. But that's a very small percentage of the US population. The US has well over 300 million people, whereas South Korea has many less than that. So the number of surgeries total divided by the number of people total is what gives you the bar statistic of 14 out of 1,000. Okay, so let's look at that. South Korea population 2011, 49.94 million. So let's do the math. We had 650,000 divided by 49 million and 940,000. We get 0.13. 0.013. So let's multiply that times 1,000, and we get 13. So this is how we get a number of 0.65 million surgeries on a population of 49,940,000, averages to about 14 out of 1,000 people having had surgeries. And that's why we multiplied by 1,000 at the end. If we didn't multiply by 1,000, then we have 0.13 out of 1. So it means you're going to meet one person and 0.13 of those people will have had surgery. That doesn't quite make sense. So they multiply it times 1,000, which is exactly what we did. So now you can make a sentence that people can sort of imagine. Yes, I could go to South Korea. I could meet 1,000 people, or I could see 1,000. For example, if I stand on the street, I could count until 1,000 people go by. And if I have done that, then I can expect that 13 out of the 1,000 people will have had some sort of plastic surgery. Now, that's the last, well, the last thing we'll talk about is the types of surgery, procedures. There's non-invasive, which is skin and hair. Non-invasive means they're not really cutting the body open, I guess, and reaching inside of the body with tools or their hands, whatever. And that's primarily skin and hair transplants, skin graft. There are so many things that people do to alter their skin: stretch marks, removal, using lasers. They do facelifts, where basically they kind of remove some of the skin and pull the rest of the skin up so the face doesn't look like it's sagging, and it gives a more youthful appearance. Hair transplants, hair removal. So those are non-invasive. If you can imagine all of those procedures, it's not necessary to cut open the body. And what they're basically saying is how many people, again, out of 1,000 have had a skin and hair surgery. So you can see in Korea, it's 8 out of 1,000. In Greece, it's about 7.5 out of 1,000. Now, here's something very neat. You have a blue line at Greece that begins at about, well, sorry, it's 7,000. So Greece has 7 out of 1,000 people have had a non-invasive procedure. That ends, the pink ends about exactly at 7, right between 6 and 8 here. Now, if you look, there's a new blue line, and the blue bar goes to right about between 8 and 9, so 8 and 10, so it's just at 9. So we have 7, the blue bar starts at exactly 7 and ends at exactly 9. From 7 to 9 is 2. So what we'll say in Greece is that 2 out of 1,000 people have had what the blue bar represents, and that is a breast procedure, right? So what you'll have to kind of do if you want to know the number per 1,000 of each type of procedure, you basically have to look at where the bar starts and where it ends and how many and what's the difference between those numbers. Okay, Greece fits in very neatly at exactly 1, but as you can see, the light blue bar, which represents surgeries involving fat, usually fat removal, liposuction, is not exactly 1, it doesn't seem to be exactly 1 long. So you might say, less than 1 out of 1,000 people in South Korea, less than 1 out of 1,000 South Koreans have had fat surgery. Overall, though, you can see this is almost like a pie chart, even though it's a bar chart, because it gives you the proportion. You can see that each surgery takes up a different proportion or a different sized part of the total surgeries of its country. If you look at Brazil, Brazil has a total of almost 8 per 1,000. So let's say Brazil is 7 out of 1,000 people have had a surgery. And out of that, skin and hair is about 3. So less than half. Whereas for Korea, South Korea, you have 13 basically people who have had surgery out of 1,000, and the skin and hair chunk is over 8. So 8 is more than half of 13. Whereas in Brazil, again, the skin procedures are less than half of all procedures. So you can see the different habits and customs of each country. You can look at Saudi Arabia. It's very clear the vast majority of procedures are skin and hair, with a small chunk breast, small chunk face, fat. I mean, you can see that it's in most countries, though, the largest chunk of surgeries is the non-invasive skin and hair. However, it's not always the majority. It's always the largest piece, but it's not always the majority. It's only the majority of surgeries if it's more than half. So for example, in South Korea, the most popular surgery was non-invasive, and the majority of surgeries were non-invasive. Let's look at Brazil. The most popular surgery was still non-invasive, but it is not the majority. It's not more than half. The majority of South Korean plastic surgeries are non-invasive. And for Brazil, you could say the most popular surgery is non-invasive, but you can't say that the majority of surgeries are non-invasive. And so, that's some language that you can use to compare. Now, I think you have a clear understanding of what all these numbers mean. And let's talk about what you can do for an assignment. You have this document. It gives you some definition of plastic surgery, some definitions for plastic surgery. I mean, you can look this up. You can look up the types of surgery so that you have different vocab to use. Now, listen very carefully. If you are doing general writing, I want you to, if you are doing academic task 1, then I want you to do your normal task where you compare trends. You can't mention every country, but you can talk about categories. You can make comparisons between, for example, which surgery was the most popular in each country, which surgery was the majority, or you can say some countries have non-invasive as a majority and others it's only the most popular but not the majority, and I gave you 2 examples for that. You could write about the difference between the total number of surgeries and the frequency of surgery in the population and how that can be different. We talked about that math. You can just kind of review, European countries versus this, or you can just take two countries and compare them. You could take the United States and your country, for example, Saudi Arabia versus Turkey, or you could do Saudi Arabia versus South Korea. I think it's interesting to note. Anything that you find interesting to note. Now, if it's task 2, I want you to write about plastic surgery is becoming more popular in the world. Why do people do this? And is it a good thing? I'll just write that down. If you're task 1, normal task, main features and comparisons, trends. If you're task 2, different types of plastic surgery are popular around the world. Why do people do this? Is it a good thing? I don't think IELTS typically uses the word thing, but I'm just putting it out there as similar to a direct question type. So talked it over, long video, but if you're task 1, you know what to do. If you're task 2, you know what to do. All right, bye.